It's no joke that when I try to counsel people into adopting more of a vegan diet, oh, I can do that, but I gotta have my cheese.
I know you like cheese because I used to like it as well. But look, you don't have to miss out on anything. You can have this instead.
Their goal was to make a change by offering tasty vegan cheese without the cruelty.
The compounds that are found in cow's milk are really targeted to baby cows.
Most people think that vegans just eat rabbit food, and I really wanted to be able to change people's perceptions on that.
Cheese causes a lot of health problems, but most importantly, cheese is addicting.
We're not missing out over here eating these plant-based foods. I think we're winning at the end of the day. I think plant-based milk and cheese really is the future of what we know now as dairy products.
Okay, today is the 19th of February, 1996. And so James is going to show us some of his tumbling. Is that what you're going to do, James? All right, you ready to give us a demo? Here he goes. Oh, did you see that? Did you see that form? How many points would he get for that? 10?
61.
He gets 61 points.
Growing up, I was just like other kids. I had endless amounts of energy, loved to show off for the camera, and also ate animals.
What'd you have for lunch?
Tacos.
Tacos. Is that your favorite? One of your favorites, isn't it? Cheese. Yes.
And rice.
Was it good?
Yes.
My favorite foods were beef tacos, spaghetti and meatballs, but the food I loved the most was definitely
Cheese. Ooh, pretty good.
cheese. And lots of other stuff.
Pasta.
Hot dog.
Hot dog. Chicken. Hot dogs. Barbecue.
Barbecue.
After learning about the problems within the meat industry and meeting the people trying to change it, I felt inspired to try and be vegetarian. But what was there left for me to eat if I can't eat meat? Well, what about my favorite food from when I was a kid? Cheese. Feta, Parmesan, mozzarella, and all the rest. But I couldn't help but wonder, how is cheese even made? So I did some research. Some people believe that the world's first cheese was actually created by accident. As legend would have it, an Arabian merchant was shocked when the milk that he was carrying in a sheep's stomach pouch separated into curd and whey due to the rennet in the lining of the pouch. I wonder if that Arabian man ever once thought that he had just discovered a product that would one day be consumed in mass all around the world. Probably not. Cut to the 21st century, and the consumption of cheese has turned into an obsession. It doesn't take more than a few minutes in any major city to see billboards advertising stuffed crust pizza, fast food chains whipping up cheeseburgers, and Italian restaurants pouring on the Parmesan. But how did this cheese boom happen? Although cheese has been eaten for thousands of years, it wasn't until the 1800s that the mass production of cheese began, in none other than the country of Switzerland, a place that's been called the cheese capital of the world. And once the US got their hands on processed cheese that was cheap to make and would melt on top of, well, nearly anything, cheese production was set to catch fire. And it did. In the past 30 years, worldwide milk production has increased by nearly 60%, with India, Pakistan, and the US being the largest producers of milk, and the United States, Germany, and France being the countries who produce the most cheese from that milk. The Greeks win the prize for the most cheese eaten in a given year, with each citizen consuming nearly 70 pounds or 32 kilos of cheese annually. That's about half of their body weight in cheese every year. Billions of animals have been bred into existence by the dairy industry, with cows, buffalo, and goats being the animals who are most frequently milked around the world. And by 2028, it's anticipated that the worldwide dairy market will be valued at $1.5 trillion. However, much like the meat industry, the dairy industry has been the cause of controversy many times, with people citing its large impact on our planet, human health, and the animals as causes for concern. I wanted to learn if there was a different way to make cheese. That's when I heard about a company in Switzerland called New Roots. Their founder, Freddie, invited me to come by and check out what he believes is the future of cheese.
New Roots is producing the finest artisanal vegan cheese made only from pure cashew milk, which is produced in a traditional way, just as Swiss dairy cheese. So right now we produce around 10,000 units, which we ship each week to like different distributors through Switzerland, through the UK, and some parts of Germany.
It really came from hearing so many people around us saying that they couldn't live without cheese, which we had said as well. I'm French and he's Swiss, so we're big cheese addicts.
The tradition of dairy cheese is huge here in Switzerland. I grew up with having almost like every day cheese on my dinner. And it's not like something I really needed in my life, but it was really nice to have. And I also knew that a lot of people felt this way.
I told Freddie one day, I think it was maybe 6 months into us being vegan, we should make vegan cheese one day.
Then I found different recipes in the internet and started to develop different products.
So he's the one who really started experimenting in our kitchen back then. I remember coming back from work and it would be a huge mess and it would smell of cheese. And he took a first batch to our local organic shop. We know these people really well and we didn't have any kind of business idea behind it, but they tried it and they said, we probably have a demand for that. So they ordered more and we really picked up from there. Like we never actually, it sounds like a line, people say that, but we actually never thought it was going to be a thing.
I guess what also makes our cheese interesting is that it's really simple. It's just as traditional dairy cheese, basically. We swap the dairy with cashew milk, and that's it.
Okay, so New Roots makes milk from cashews, but what exactly does that process look like? Freddie showed me one of their advertisements so I could get a better idea.
Cashew! 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 Cashew!
Okay, so maybe it's not exactly like this. Instead, Freddie gave me a tour of the New Roots production facility so I could see firsthand how they're really making cheese from cashews.
So basically here we make the cashew milk each morning, freshly produced cashew milk. We grind cashew nuts only with water into milk, and from there it's like the base as dairy milk for our cheeses. This equipment we got from an old cheese-making facility that shut their door, and we could pick it up really cheaply. And that's how we produce right now those amounts of cheese. We use the same techniques, the same machines. You even have the sticker on it here. It says like milking machine. Yeah, it's kind of funny. We use different specialized cultures, traditional cheese-making cultures. Then we curdle the milk, it gets separated from the whey. Tomorrow it gets salted, it comes into cheese molds, and then it looks and tastes like cheese. Cashew milk does have almost the same pH as cow milk, so we can really use like the same techniques, the same cultures because of this. We don't add starches, we don't add oils, we don't add anything to give a cheesy flavor in it. We literally have those 4 ingredients, the cashews, the water, the cultures and the salt. I think that's what makes our cheese unique and healthy and also really tasty. So basically in here we remove the produced cheeses from the cheese molds. Natalina is spraying the cheeses with traditional camembert cultures so that the cheese is ready to age for about 2 to 3 weeks. And with the time, this mold is growing, it's edible mold. It takes up 2 to 3 weeks until it's fully covered with mold. Those 2 different cheeses, as you see, this is a really young one. It's like about 10 days old. And here you have the final product. It's aged for about 3 weeks. And that's how we're gonna eat it in the end.
Just like you might be thinking right now, I couldn't help but wonder why Freddie would go through all of this trouble to make an alternative to cheese, when dairy cheese is probably one of the most loved foods in the world. He shared with me the story and the accident that changed his perspective.
I wouldn't have started this vegan company if I wouldn't have been vegan myself.
Before becoming an artisanal vegan cheesemaker, Freddie was a professional mountain biker with a ton of accolades to his name. And like most athletes, he was eating meat and dairy with nearly every meal. But something changed for him when he got into a serious accident. The inspiration for his big change in lifestyle started right here in the emergency room.
I read a lot of books about the healing process from a plant-based diet. And then once I was plant-based, I got into veganism. I got into the ethics about how we treat animals, how we use animals for food. And that's basically when I went vegan. And from then on, it was clear for me that I won't need any other dairy product again or like an animal product again if I can thrive on a vegan diet.
After a heavy surgery and months of physical therapy, Freddie was ready to get back to his passion. But he never did return to eating animal products again. In fact, he made it his mission to create a plant-based version of his favorite food, cheese. And from that idea, New Roots was born. Freddie's main goal at the time was to recover from his accident. So why did he give up animal products in order to do that? Aren't dairy products important for bone health? As a kid, I grew up learning from my favorite characters that I needed milk and dairy products in order to grow up big and strong. Superman told me that if I drink milk, I'll have bones of steel. Super Mario told me that the calcium in milk would help my bones grow. And all of my other childhood favorites telling me that it was vital for me to drink milk. Hell, in a recent Super Bowl ad, The Rock even drank it by the gallon.
We're out of milk.
And refused to save a kitten from a tree until he could get his fix.
I'm sorry, honey. Gotta go.
There are a number of advertisements out there that suggest that it's a nightmare to go without milk for even a few minutes, and that it's something that we as humans desperately need. But there was one ad I remember that not only impacted my self-esteem, but also made me feel weak if I went even a single day without drinking milk.
Hang in there, Tom. I'm you 2 years from now, because you're drinking milk and working out.
Well, I'm not changing so far.
But milk's at work inside you.
Oh, yeah?
And tomorrow the difference can show. All that protein for muscle and calcium for bones.
But I'm still a skinny bench warmer.
Hey, if the sight of yourself at 18 doesn't convince you, Tom, listen to your senior year girlfriend.
Hi, Tom. I'm waiting.
Milk. It does a body good.
After all of these years of being told that I needed to consume dairy products to be healthy, I knew it was finally time for me to do some research. So I checked out the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, created by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The USDA is a governmental organization that, among other things, creates dietary guidelines for the American population every 5 years. Schools, hospitals, and other institutions must adhere to these recommendations concerning the food that they offer. But when I took a look at the USDA website, I found that creating dietary guidelines is not their only purpose. The USDA also works every day to strengthen the American agricultural economy and improve both domestic and international markets, while creating new income opportunities. So the USDA works to help farmers sell their products and turn a profit, while also making dietary recommendations to the entire American population. And the more that I looked at the USDA's website, the more confused I became. The USDA guidelines specifically recommend that all Americans consume dairy products. They also recommend that all Americans limit foods containing saturated and trans fats, while keeping cholesterol consumption as low as possible. These recommendations are made to help protect Americans from our top killers, such as heart disease and stroke. So I searched which foods contain the highest amounts of these harmful components, and lo and behold, at the top of the list were dairy products. The only solution to this recommended by the USDA is to choose lower fat options of dairy. So they're recommending people eat foods that, in their original form, are known to cause disease. And the confusion continues around the globe. The UK dietary guidelines also recommend that people consume dairy products. Their solution to cause less disease is to buy reduced-fat cheese, or try grating it instead of slicing it to avoid using more than they need. So we do need to eat cheese? And the same thing in India. There, they recognize the health implications of eating a diet high in saturated fat, such as reducing insulin sensitivity and increasing the risk of heart disease. They recommend to restrict the consumption of butter and cheese. However, they also say that that same saturated fat is good for infants and young children, and that milk is a rich source of calcium which helps build strong bones. My research only made me feel more lost in the world of dairy products. Had I been told a lie my entire life, or was consuming dairy a necessity for my survival? I wasn't convinced, so I met up with a doctor who wasn't either. This is Dr. Milton Mills. He's a plant-based practitioner based in the US that has spoken out multiple times against the dairy industry and the USDA's dietary guidelines.
The primary reason that dairy products are promoted for human consumption is allegedly because of their contribution to our calcium nurture. The idea is that, well, milk has calcium, it's a good source of calcium, and it will help build strong bones. Nothing could be further from the truth. Studies have consistently shown that dairy calcium does not promote the development of strong bones. When you look around the world, per capita dairy consumption versus the incidence of osteoporosis or weak skeletons, those countries that consume the most dairy products have the highest prevalence of osteoporosis and related fractures.
Hold up. Drinking milk can actually lead to weaker bones? This goes against basically everything that I've ever heard about dairy. So I went back to my computer and came across a study from the American Journal of Epidemiology. They found that the consumption of dairy products, particularly at the age of 20, was actually associated with an increased risk of hip fractures in old age. And the 12-year-long Harvard Nurses study found that those who consume the most calcium from dairy products actually broke more bones than those who rarely consume dairy. And the health problems related to dairy consumption don't end at bone fractures.
I actually came here this morning to call out the racism that is inherent in the U.S. dietary guidelines, but then as I got to look at this committee, I suddenly understood why it's such an intractable problem. I saw that the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee was comprised of almost all Caucasian people. We had a Dietary Guidelines Committee that looked nothing like America in terms of its overall ethnic composition. When it comes to Americans of color, 95% of Asian Americans, 74% of Native Americans, 73 to 75% of African Americans, and 53% of Hispanic Americans are intolerant of lactose, meaning that when they eat lactose-containing products, they will develop gastrointestinal distress, which includes cramping, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and more subtly, alterations in their colonic microbiome that are not healthful.
The USDA also talks about lactose intolerance and recommends that those who are intolerant to lactose consume low lactose or lactose-free dairy products. But what exactly does this mean? It turns out that lactose is just a form of sugar found in the milk of all mammalian mothers, and it can only be digested with an enzyme in our stomachs called lactase. Babies and young children produce this enzyme naturally as their bodies are designed to consume milk from their mothers. However, as the baby grows, lactase production declines, and with it goes the ability to digest lactose without complications. For the first 290,000 years of modern human beings being on Earth, we didn't drink the milk of other species. However, about 10,000 years ago, when we started domesticating animals, it was a convenient source of calories to drink their milk. And because adult humans pushed past stomach aches for a few thousand years, a genetic mutation called lactase persistence trait occurred that enabled them to consume lactose throughout adulthood. However, in many parts of the world, it was not possible nor economical to raise dairy cows, which explains why many populations are largely lactose intolerant.
I have actually seen illness caused by your guidelines. As people have already mentioned, the vast majority of people of color in this country are intolerant of the lactose that's in milk. Yet, because they think they have to eat this stuff, they go out, eat it, get sick, and think that they have some sort of intestinal problem. But in fact, when I encourage them to stop eating dairy, their problems cleared up. And so
we have a very, very myopic view of history and of what humans eat. It's a very white colonialist mindset that we assume that everyone in the world has eaten dairy for thousands of years or centuries. We've forgotten that in places like where I grew up in Japan, we didn't consume dairy and we were just fine. That's one of the things that we have to fight, is our own prejudiced mindset that dairy is a food that needs to be substituted. We don't even need to introduce it into many parts of the world that still don't consume it. For most of human history, we didn't consume a lot of meat, we didn't consume a lot of dairy, and there is nothing that says we can't go back to eating in a way that we have for most of human history.
People don't like to think about this, but it's true. Cows are pregnant about 3/4 of every year. On dairies, they're impregnated, and their pregnancy lasts about 9 months. A pregnant cow makes estrogens that end up in the milk, and they're concentrated in the cheese. It's only traces, but I guarantee you it's not there in a vegan cheese at all. There's cholesterol in the dairy cheese. There is never any cholesterol in the vegan cheeses. There's animal fat, obviously, huge amount of animal fat. In the dairy cheeses, there's not a drop of it in the cashew cheese or other cheeses.
Eating is a zero-sum game. Every time we put something in our mouth, it's a lost opportunity to put something healthier in our mouth. So you ask something like, well, are eggs good? Well, compared to the breakfast sausage next door, yeah, actually they are. But compared to oatmeal, not even close, right? Same thing with cheese. Now, it's hard to find something worse than cheese, but you could, like Crisco, right? Hydrogenated oils, pure trans fats. I mean, that's worse than cheese. I don't know, there's not, I mean, but right, so cheese just concentrated, saturated butter fat, lots of sodium. So it's missing all the nutrients and concerned things that we really need to get more of in our diet, like, potassium and fiber, and has a lot of things we don't want, like saturated fat, cholesterol, sodium.
By law, dairy farmers are allowed to include a certain amount of pus, blood, bacteria, and fecal matter in a gallon of milk. All of that is still in the milk when it is converted into cheese.
I wanted to learn more about this, so I headed back to the USDA website. Apparently, being hooked up to milking machines often causes an infection in cows called mastitis, which can cause pus to leach out from their udders and into the milk. The USDA claims that 1 in every 4 dairy cows in the US suffers from clinical mastitis. This is why the USDA has specific allowances on the number of somatic cells that can be in every liter of milk, 750 million to be exact. European regulators allow 400 million somatic cells per liter, and Australia has no limit. Measuring the number of somatic cells in milk allows dairy producers to know how much inflammation is in the body of a cow. There are also limits on the amount of coliform which can be found in milk, which is a bacteria in the digestive tract of animals that exits their bodies when they poop.
When we started selling it on the market, I was really surprised at how Swiss people reacted, because they are very proud of their traditions, but somehow most of them just seem to think that we're kind of honoring the traditions by making cheese a different way, which I personally didn't expect. We had so many people really, calling out their friends, telling them, come and try, it's vegan cheese, it's plant-based, and non-vegan cheese makers telling us this is definitely cheese. I know about cheese and this is cheese.
We really got some emails from customers in Thun who wrote us that since they can buy our cheeses, it's so easy to be on a plant-based diet, and that's really what makes us the most happy to see that what we do makes sense, and it helps people to convert to a vegan diet.
It's much easier to do that when you actually have a product to offer people and tell them that I know you like cheese and I know you like whatever animal product because I used to like it as well, but look, you don't have to miss out on anything. You can have this instead. Cheese being such a big thing, especially here in Europe.
I couldn't help but wonder why this simple product made from milk was such a big issue. Why as a society are we so obsessed with cheese?
Cheese is fattening, no question. Cheese causes a lot of health problems, many of which are surprises to people. But most importantly, cheese is addicting.
When I knew I was going to be vegan and I was, trying to be vegan, I would literally wake up in the middle of the night and have cheese cravings, and they were real. Like I would have a certain type of cheese in my head and I was like, I need to eat this right now.
It's no joke that when I try to counsel people into adopting more of a vegan diet, that, oh, I can do that, but I gotta have my cheese. It's like, why? I mean, cheese doesn't even smell good, but people are really addicted to their cheese.
There are narcotic compounds, I'm talking about actual chemical opiates, in the casein protein, which is in all milk, but it's concentrated in cheese. They're called casomorphins, and they attach to the brain at the exact same brain receptor that heroin would attach to. They're not as strong as heroin. The strongest one has about 1/10 the brain binding power compared to pharmacy-grade morphine, which is not strong enough to get you arrested, but it's strong enough to make you want cheese and to make you feel better after you've had it.
It makes sense. Nature wants a infant mammal to feed from its mother. Therefore, it puts compounds in the mother's milk that essentially makes the baby want to drink it. But then when you concentrate them down into a block of cheese, then you do have something that does create an addictive quality and tends to make people really want to eat cheese.
You know, I just try to point out the facts to people. Cheese is by far mostly fat, mostly saturated fat, the number one source of saturated fat in the American diet. There's no need to consume this product. It's incredibly unhealthy. If they can't break the habit after maybe a 3-week span of not consuming cheese, and I'll say just give it 3 weeks, you can have a cheese party on day 22 after the 3 weeks is over. But almost always when they get to the end of that 3 weeks, they've in fact kind of broken that habit. And a lot of the habit, yes, it's the opioids and the dopamine receptors. It's also this craving for fat. And then it's besides oil, it's harder to condense fat into one thing like cheese does. And you sort of lose that desire to have that much fat feel in your mouth. Your body is just so clean that when you put it in, it doesn't react well and it doesn't feel good. And you might just say, I think I'm done. I think I'm done with cheese. Besides, hey, my blood pressure's down, my skin's clearer, I breathe better, my blood sugars are under control. You also just don't even want it. It doesn't taste good anymore.
The addictive qualities of cheese certainly seem to be leading the world back for more. In the US, cheese consumption has more than doubled since the 1970s, from less than 15 pounds per person per year to nearly 40.
We started looking into why is cheese being sold everywhere, and the amount of cheese that people consume year after year has just been skyrocketing. And we found something interesting. The US government is specifically promoting it. We found through the Freedom of Information Act contracts that the US government had signed with Wendy's, Taco Bell, the other fast food chains, with, frankly, a very clever marketing strategy.
Taco Bell's new grilled cheese burrito is filled with nacho cheese sauce and a delicious 3-cheese blend. And even more melty cheese is grilled on top.
Gouda bacon cheeseburger and bacon fondue fries. Only at Wendy's. Cheese finally has its day.
If you just want to advertise in New York or Chicago, eat more cheese, that may work, may not work. But if you have a contract with a fast food chain, they're in every neighborhood. And that's what they did. So with Wendy's, they marketed a special product called the Cheddar Lovers Bacon Cheeseburger. With Taco Bell, they gave them little hats about the power of cheese. And in each case, it was many different fast food chains. They would give free marketing advice. They would launch new products, new advertisements to, in their words, the government words, trigger the cheese craving.
But why is the US government so involved in the marketing of dairy products? Well, the answer lies in the history of the United States, World War II, and a product that became a staple in the diet of soldiers.
Milk is playing an important part in the training of the greatest armed forces in our history. A famous general once said, the more milk you put into a soldier, the more fight you get out of him. For milk, with its healthful vitamins and mineral elements, builds strong men. And in this time of need, it is strong men who give America its strength.
One of the largest increases in global dairy production came from the United States in World War II. During the war, milk was being produced like never before, so that the US Army could feed processed milk products like tinned and powdered milk to their growing fleet of soldiers. However, in order to find a revenue stream large enough to support dairy farmers making these products, they also needed to start driving liquid milk sales on home soil. Farmers had been milking cows like never before, but when the war ended, they were left with a problem. They had a huge excess of cows and leftover product. The US government jumped in to support them, and in 1946 started the National School Lunch Program, which required every lunch in this program to include a glass of whole milk each day.
And this energy must be replaced by nourishing food with a brimming glass of milk. For they know that no other food supplies as many healthful elements.
However, even with this program, there were still massive surpluses of milk, so it was made into cheese and purchased by the US government. President Reagan ended these government buybacks in the 80s, which upset the dairy industry. So they lobbied Congress to create the Dairy Checkoff Program, also known as the Dairy Research and Promotion Program. The Dairy Checkoff is a fund that dairy producers pay into, and the government then uses those funds to promote dairy consumption and, quote, protect the good image of dairy farmers, dairy products, and the dairy industry. This typically translates into making fun commercials and convincing the public to consume more milk and cheese, all approved by the USDA. The Dairy Checkoff program exists until this day, and some of their latest achievements include a Pizza Hut partnership that led to 25% more cheese being used on their pan pizzas, as well as a scientific reformulation of cheese at McDonald's that created a 30% larger slice of sharp white cheddar cheese being used on the Egg White Delight. What a win for science. Keep in mind this is coming from an organization that in 2015 released guidelines recommending that people stay away from cheese-smothered foods like pizza and cheeseburgers. How is it possible that the same organization creating the guidelines that tell people how to eat in a healthy way are also creating partnerships with McDonald's and Pizza Hut to sell more cheese?
It's important for people to understand that we have been misled when it comes to the appropriateness of consuming dairy products. I know when I grew up, and I think when most people have grown up, they have been taught that milk is an ideal food, or it's the perfect food, or it's a healthful way to obtain a number of important nutrients. But the fact is that milks are mammalian fluids designed by nature that are species specific, meaning that the proteins, the compounds, the hormones that are found in cow's milk are really targeted to baby cows. And they're designed to stimulate and promote appropriate rates of growth in cows.
While researching the health problems associated with dairy consumption, I kept coming across some studies that suggested that diets with cheese might actually be healthier than their vegan counterparts. How is this possible?
This was actually the tobacco industry tactic. I mean, they realized back in the 50s when all of a sudden we were, building rockets and things and scientists were held up in esteem, the tobacco industry realized we need to get science on board, and that they started this whole institute and, started pouring money into creating their science. There was just a study funded by the dairy industry to try to trash Daiya, which is this non-dairy cheese. And it just shows that they're willing to, the fact that they're publishing studies, what a threat the non-dairy kind of industry is. Dairy cheese has a saturated butterfat. Raises your cholesterol, it does bad things to you, increase inflammation. So they do a head-to-head test, and cheese came out better. How is that possible? Of course it came out better. It was funded by the dairy industry. How do you make some plant-based version look worse? What they did is they did cheese versus Daiya plus this massive load of palm kernel oil, which is this rare saturated plant fat used in a lot of junky processed foods. They added so much that it caused this big spike of inflammation, right? And so then they can be like, see? Cheese versus Daiya. I'm like, what? That's crazy. Do you want to see what's actually published? And now we can have access to this. You don't have to live next to a good medical library. It's all online now, right? You can see the actual studies and not just it doesn't have to be filtered through people with opinions or access to grind or trying to sell you some crazy snake oil supplement. Science is the best tool we have for sifting through what's true, what's not. There's still problems with it, but what else are we going to do? And if there's any decision to make based on evidence, it should be, what to feed yourself and your family, right? I mean, these are literally life and death decisions.
It's important to realize that these are always treats anyway. So I wouldn't encourage people to have any kind of even vegan cheese as their go-to food 3 times a day. It's for a party. And it's there to lure your friends away from all the bad stuff. That's what they're really for. And they are wildly successful. They are a delicious treat. and you can eat them in good conscience.
On my way to Australia, I stopped in Bali, Indonesia, to check out a cafe that was creating a vegan version of a food that just wouldn't be the same without cheese. And that's pizza.
I would believe that pizza is one of the most loved food across the whole world. It's something that everyone can enjoy.
Who doesn't love pizza? We all love pizza.
We sell 100% plant-based pizza. There's about 8 different flavors on the menu, and let me tell you, I've eaten my fair share of them in the last few months.
There's 2 key elements that make a good pizza. You've got to have a good dough, a good base, and an epic cheese. We make our cheese from cashews is the main element. A few other key secret ingredients that give the cheesy texture and also make it meltable. We put a lot of love and effort into finding a cheese that looks good, that can melt, and tastes bomb. It's such a comfort food. It's such a communal food that people can share and enjoy together. So that is just another prime example of going vegan and eating vegan food. You don't have to miss out on anything. You know, we're not missing out over here eating these plant-based foods. We're actually, I think we're winning at the end of the day. I wanted to be able to help people realize just how good vegan food is, because even before I was vegan, I'm like, what am I going to eat? No cheese, no meat, no, most people think that vegans just eat rabbit food, and I really wanted to be able to change people's perceptions on that.
Who wants some ice cream? We do!
People get really confused when you make a cheese alternative. They really don't understand, why would you need this? Why would you do this? We have cows in Switzerland. A lot of people don't get it. And I think the frustrating part is also that they see those cows on the fields and they really think that they're really happy to be there. And they don't see what they're all going through, We have in Switzerland over 350,000 calves get killed, each year, just so people can enjoy the dairy cheese,
I think the impression that most people have when they're driving through the country and seeing happy cows grazing in the grass is that they have a good life. Milk is a byproduct, there's no harm. I was one of those people for many years. I was a vegetarian for many years before I became vegan, and I really did not understand the harm behind dairy.
While the dairy industry would probably prefer us to think that cow's milk comes from some magical faraway place, the truth is that it comes from, logically speaking, pregnant cows. Cows, just like humans, only produce milk when they become pregnant and have given birth to a baby. And in order for a cow to become pregnant, she must be impregnated. The dairy industry would also probably prefer us to think that they allow cows to mate naturally as they would in the wild. This is also not the case. I came across a few dairy industry training videos online that show how it's done. And just as a warning, these videos are both disturbing and also considered standard practice within the industry.
So today we've got set up this artificial 3-dimensional cow.
His testicles are basically his semen factory. This is usually collected using the electroejaculator, which is a battery-powered probe which goes into the rectum and stimulates the nerves to the accessory sex glands and penis.
The farmer then takes the semen and inserts it into the vagina of the cow while they simultaneously insert their fist into the cow's anus to massage her cervix and more easily impregnate her. And it gets worse. After 9 months of being pregnant, the cow gives birth to her calf, and almost immediately, the calf attempts to feed from her. However, the dairy industry knows that if they were to allow the calf to drink milk from their mother, there would be no milk left for them to sell. So the farmer takes away her calf, typically within hours after birth. If the calf is a female, they are taken away to be put into a crate to be raised as a dairy cow. If the calf is a male, he will be killed immediately or locked in a veal crate until he is slaughtered. On top of that, after around 5 years, dairy cows can no longer produce milk and are considered spent by the industry. When their milk production slows or stops, the dairy industry can no longer profit from them. So they send them to a slaughterhouse to be killed and turned into low-grade hamburger meat. In the US, for example, around 20% of beef comes from spent dairy cows. A cow can live up to 20 years on a sanctuary.
The dairy industry is just as cruel, if not probably more cruel than the meat industry.
This mother cow goes through the same cycle for 4 to 6 years before she too is shipped off for slaughter. So when people say milk is a byproduct, actually milk is meat. It's the same thing, but it's even worse because the cow suffers for longer than a beef cow.
To me, the word vegan means justice. It means refusing to participate in a system that teaches us from basically the day we're born that certain other species are here on Earth just to serve humans. Once you open your eyes on what we do to billions and billions of animals each year, it's very hard to unsee, and also you don't want to unsee it. You just want to help people open their eyes as well.
For me, sometimes it seems like humans are lost and we're just not conscious enough on what we're having each day, you know, what we're eating, where our food comes from and how it has been produced, you know, and that's a huge part I would like to change by offering the people great, tasty vegan cheese without the cruelty.
When I was a kid, we didn't really think anything about the animal side of things. It just wasn't on my radar, really. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and my dad grew up in the cattle business, and his father and as far back as I could trace, everybody was raising cattle. And I drove cattle to East St. Louis to not very nice end of their life. We knew the animals weren't having a nice time, but it didn't really register very much. But once you discover that you're better off not eating animal products, and you start to reflect on what animals actually go through, in my own mind, I've reflected on the faces of the cattle as they were coming off the truck on their way to slaughter. And I started to think, you know, what a good thing we can do now by just leaving them off the plate. They're better off. Your coronary arteries are better off. Your kids are a whole lot better off not getting into that.
The mother-child bond goes far beyond the human species. You can witness it in any other species. They love each other, they adore each other. And we end that the minute the baby is born in the dairy industry because we want the milk for ourselves.
I think plant-based milk and cheese really is the future of what we know now as dairy products.
There are so many vegan options. There are so many vegan cheeses available right now on the market, like worldwide.
We can have cheese, you know, it just doesn't need to involve exploiting an animal. It's better for the planet and obviously better for the animals.
With so much going on in the world right now, the one thing we have control of is how we show up in the world and the choices that we make.
Human beings are natural plant eaters. That is a way we will have the best and most optimal health, and that we will have the least negative impact on the world and the environment. And of course, we will not be contributing to animal cruelty.
Food is a critically important issue. Your food choices dictate your health, the health of the earth and all its inhabitants. So it's big stuff.
It's just win, 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 win. And there is no other diet that I've ever seen in research studies or just anecdotally that has all those benefits.
Next time on Planet Vegan.
When a person thinks about a plant-based diet, the first question that comes up is, where do you get your protein?
We have overhyped and overblown this protein obsession.
When I found out that I was plant-based, everybody came up to me like, you're on drugs.
The people there told me like, oh, you can't be vegan and do CrossFit. And that just like really boosted my motivation. I was like, I'm gonna freaking show you. Future generations are gonna look at us like, dang, they used to eat meat.
Going plant-based is like having sex. If you didn't enjoy it, you weren't doing it right.
If I could still be at the top of my game and eat this way, then why not?
Doctors automatically assume if you're vegan and you're not feeling well, then the problem has to do with your diet.
The most important thing we can do in terms of health and longevity is what we put in our mouth.
We going back to the Gold Coast. Fast food, yo, it's burgers and fries. And it used to hurt the earth and the birds in the sky, but now they making it with plants, and it's so much better, cause the animals are safe, no more changes in the weather. We better act fast, cause the ice barely freezing. The world's changing quick, so welcome to Planet Vegan. Yeah, okay, we about to change the world, right? Okay. All around the world, it's the same new dance. What you making out of bodies? Yeah, we're making out of plants. We gotta save the pigs and the fishes in the sea. So hold on to your pants, Planet Vegan soon to be. There's a change up in the system, I can feel it in the air, but it benefits us all, there's no need to be scared. We're gonna change the world and we'll do it in a day. So don't fight the future, Planet Vegan's here to stay. We going back to the Gold Coast.